What to do when you have to clean your brushes. The most common way to clean your brushes is to use odorless mineral spirits. Odorless mineral spirits is a petroleum distillate that is fairly mild with low odor. You should always use odorless mineral spirits in a well-ventilated area, preferably with some type of airflow occurring. In my space, I use a fan directed towards a window that intakes air from a different window. Doing this, I always have positive pressure into the room, which will move the odorless mineral spirit fumes around. I find the most efficient way is to use very dry paper towel or newspaper to wipe off any excess paint from my brushes as much as possible first, and then using odorless mineral spirits either at the end of my painting session or when I'm dramatically switching which colors I'm using. I find that this helps keep the paint colors as separate as possible. When you have a little bit of paint still stuck inside your brush, especially in the ferrule, if you are digging the paint deep into your brush, when you mix a new color, you'll often see that some of that old color bleeds. And some may prefer that. In order to have a more unified portrait and piece, you really do want a mixture of every color on your palette mixed into every color if you're painting something that is organic and more natural. And this is something that you must figure out with your own style of painting. If you are using odorless mineral spirits, you can reuse your mineral spirits almost indefinitely. You can do this by allowing your mineral spirits to settle over the course of days or weeks, and all the sediments from your paint will set at the bottom. There will always be a little bit of sediment that is still stuck inside of your mineral spirits. This is something that is unavoidable, though you can try to filter out any impurities using a coffee filter or other strainer. The other way in which you can clean your oil painting brushes is to use soap. You can use an artist soap like brush cleaner, or you can choose just to use regular dish soap, Murphy's oil soap, anything that is not harsh enough to dissolve the hairs of your brush, depending on which materials you use, and that will dissolve out any remaining oil. The other alternative is to use a solvent alternative fluid, something like spike lavender oil or a citrus oil cleaner. These are fairly pricey and arrive in fairly small quantities. So if you're using this, I would recommend trying to get as much of the oil off of your brush first as possible, and then using your spike oil, your lavender spike oil, or your citrus oil as a final removing agent. There's only one or two brands that I know of that make high quality oil painting cleaners using these components. There are other alternative solvents, such as terpenoid, I find that if you use terpenoid, while it is a fairly effective solvent, it is also fairly weak. In addition to being weak, it has the tendency to gum up your paint. By gum up, I mean if you use terpenoid as a thinner for when you are painting as a way to make washes, those washes may remain fairly gummy even years after you're painting. I find this especially true with terpenoid natural, which is a citrus-based solvent. If you mix that into your paint will never quite oxidize correctly. There are also other hardware store low VOC orange citrus based strippers you could try, though I would advise against it as the fumes are quite harsh and they tend to not really do that great a job stripping things from your brushes. There is a more involved process with it, and you will still need to wash off any remaining citrus cleaner stripper that remains inside of your brush. Because of this, I advise against using these for the sake of oil painting, especially if you're using smaller brushes. So really, it still all does come out to one thing. You need to use soap and water if you want to really get all the substances inside of your brush out. And you want to get all the way to the ferrule. You want to make sure that you clean deep and good. Because if you get paint stuck in the ferrule, it will continue to build up over time and become a thick brick that isn't the same brush that you originally bought, and it will be a much different feel. What is the alternative? If you are always painting and you never miss a day of painting, some people may advise that you use a non-drying oil.